friends, my name is Maylin and welcome back to my channel. I'm a flutist, performer, and music teacher located in the city of Kamloops, British Columbia, and this is my channel where we learn all things flute. So thank you so much for joining me here today. In today's video, we'll be going on to page number 9 of the 76 Graded Studies for the Flute, part 1, and if you're interested, then just keep on watching. As always, if you have any questions throughout the video, please feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I do my best to answer them as soon as I see them. Also, if you are having any issues when it comes to practicing, feel free to check out my free practice guide, also located in the description down below. It gives you 8 really easy steps to follow to help guide your practice sessions. Alright, so let's just get right into today's video. Alright, and as I mentioned earlier, we are going from the 76 Graded Studies for the Flute, part 1, and I will be starting on the bottom of page 8, but it goes into page 9 here, and that's going to be for Etude number 21. So I'm just going to put it up right over here. So this one doesn't have a title, but it is by Jeremiah Clark, which is great to notice. So let's go through our 6 starter bits before we get into clapping and counting the Etude. So first, as always, we're going to be looking at our number 1 key signature. So let's look in between the treble clef and our time signature. We see that there is 1 flat there. So that means we can either be in F major or D minor. So let's take a look at the beginning and the ending of the piece to see if we get an indication of the tonic or any one of the triad notes, which would be F, A, or C in the beginning or the end. So at the very beginning, we do see an F there, and then making sure that because there's an interesting roadmap here, go to the fine. The fine is going to be that second line on bar number 8, and it also ends on an F, so I would say we are probably in F major. But we always want to make sure that we check for the raised 7th of the minor key just to see if we have any indication of that or any suggestion that we might be switching halfway through the piece. So of course we know that relative minor key of F major is D minor. So how you can find the relative minor, just in case you forgot, is you can either go up 6 tones, so that'd be F, G, A, B, C, D letter names, or you can also go down 3 letter names, so that is F, E, D. Perfect. So of course, now that we found that the relative minor key is D minor, now we're going to look for the raised 7th. So you're just going to go down 1 semitone from that note, and that's a C sharp. So let's take a look and see if we can find any C sharps throughout the piece. And at a quick glance, I see maybe 1 or 2, also 3, 4, but nothing that's super prominent throughout the piece. So what I would say is that we're definitely switching between the major and the minor key, but because of the beginning and the ending notes being on F, I would say we're in F major, which we are. Alright, so let's take a look at number 2, our time signature. So we do see that C again with a line in the middle, so that represents cut time. So if you remember what comma time is, that's 4/4. So if you cut that in half, that means you get 2/2. So that means we get 2 half notes per measure. So you can also count it as if it's in 4/4, but just make sure that you know that the strong beats are always going to be 1 and 3, and the weak beats are going to be 2 and 4. Number 3, you're going to be looking at that tempo indication here. So here we have tempo di gavotte. So we do have the metronome marking here. So we have a half note equals 76. That will be your final tempo. Of course, if you find that that's too fast, always make sure you slow it down all the way until you can't make any mistakes when you're clapping and counting it, and then slowly increasing it over time till you get to that final tempo. Number 4, we're going to be looking at our dynamics. So we start on an F, which is forte at the very beginning there, and then we go to a piano halfway through the 4th complete bar there. Then we have little crescendo written right beside it, so that means you're going to slowly crescendo all the way until the end of bar 8, which is in that second line. Then we go right down to piano again, where we have a nice written out lines there. Those 2 lines that grow, and that's another way of writing crescendo. So you go to crescendo to a mezzo forte, and then down to piano again. And then we play piano all the way up until bar 15, where we have another crescendo there to a mezzo forte. And then once you get to those high notes, that high C there, we're going to play forte, back down to piano. And then in bar 20, we have a PP, which is pianissimo. So it's even more softly than piano. So then we are going to just play that all the way up until bar 22 there, where we have forte again. So it's a very dramatic change between the pianissimo and the forte. And then we switch back down to piano at bar 24, where we have another crescendo to bar 26 mezzo forte, that high D. And then we have mezzo forte all the way until the end of that last line there, where we have that marking, plus a forte, where we go all the way back to the beginning with the DC Alfini, which we'll talk about in the roadmap. Beautiful. So now that we've gone through the dynamics, let's make sure we take a look at the articulation here because there's definitely some interesting things going on. So we do have a general pattern here. So for the majority of the piece, any quarter notes are going to be played staccato. Again, the staccato is the little dot above the note head. That means it's detached. And then we do have some tenutos. So we don't have a ton of tenutos written out, but just make sure that when you do see them that you play those notes for its entire length. So that is the long line, straight line on top of any of the note heads. I primarily see them in the first full bar and the second full bar, and then also in that second line there a few times. But otherwise I don't see it there throughout the piece at a quick glance. All right, then I'm also noticing that we do have a lot of slurred notes when it comes to the eighth notes here. So just make sure that you're paying attention to those at the beginning there on bars 4, 5, 6. We do have 3 slurred and 1 tongued, which is that staccato there. And then it does change in bar 7 where we have 2 slurred, 2 slurred. And then we'll take a look and we're going to bar 15 there. It changes the pattern. So we have 4 slurred there instead of doing any 3 slurred or 1 tongued. And then it follows a similar pattern after that. So at bar 15, 16, 17, after that it's all repeated where you have 2 tongued and then 4 slurred again. Making sure that if you want to use some visual cues here, you can use some erasable pencils or even some highlighters, whatever you have to make a difference to show that there are different articulations throughout the etude here. And then finally we're going to go on to number 6, and that's going to be our roadmap. So I know I kind of hinted it earlier. So we are going to start at the beginning. We don't see any repeat notes. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing from the top all the way down to the bottom of the piece where we see DC al fine. DC is short for da capo. So again, if you remember, da capo is kind of like a hat on the top of your head. You're going to go all the way back to the beginning, and then you're going to finish where the fine is, which is at bar 8 there. And we do have a fermata over the bar line. So that means that at the end, you're going to want to take a nice pause, a nice dramatic pause before ending the piece. All right, so let's get into clapping and counting the piece. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be clapping it at the final tempo here. So my half note is going to equal 76. Again, if you find that that's way too fast for you to start, no worries. Just go down into the playback settings of this video, which is clicking that gear, and slow it down to a tempo that you feel is more comfortable for your starting point. And just make sure that you are aware that we do start on a pickup bar. So instead of starting on beat 1, we're actually starting on beat 3. My invention note is going to be counting a half note, but I will be counting out loud the quarter notes here. So I'll be saying 1, 2, 3, 4. Although you only hear the metronome beat every 1 and every third beat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. All right, so that should be a really great challenge. Again, slowing that down where you are playing that at a tempo that you're not making any mistakes, and then adding the flute to that. All right, and before we do start playing this piece with the flute, just make sure that you do recap any of the notes because there are a lot of accidentals in here. So making sure that you write them in if you feel like you're not comfortable with them, especially when it's up in that ledger line. And of course, using colors to help you here, that'll really help to differentiate some of those accidentals for you. Also, if you find that reading the actual accidental is a little bit difficult, you can always switch to writing down the enharmonic, which can also help you. Sometimes it confuses some people, but it does help with others, so I figured I would recommend it. So now I'm going to play it with the flute again. The half note is going to equal 76, and I will be playing it as written, so we'll be playing it all the way from the beginning, and then we'll play it to the end, go back to the beginning, and finish the fine. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, very good. So that should be a really great exercise to play. Really make sure that you're paying attention to number 1, that you're getting all the notes right, including all those accidentals. And then number 2, that you're also getting the articulation right. And then once you're comfortable with all of those, making sure that you're getting the right dynamics as well. All right, so now we're gonna get on to our second etude for the video. That's number 22. So I'm just gonna put it up right over here. So as always, we will be taking a look at our first 6 starter bits before we get into the piece. So number 1 is going to be our key signature. So again, we have the same possibilities as we did with the last etude. So we do have 1 flat, so that means it can either be an F major or D minor. So let's take a look at the first note and the last note to see if we have the tonic of either of those keys. So we start on a D and we end on a D. So that's a strong indication that we're in D minor. Let's just make sure that we are and check to see if we can find that raised 7th, which is going to be that C sharp. So taking a look across all of the different C's here, I see it popping up everywhere. So we see it on the 3rd bar of the first line, we see it in the 4th bar of the 2nd line, and then there's a little break there where we do have a change in the pattern, the rhythm pattern there. So we don't see any C sharps in there. However, it does return when we do have that repeat of the section of bar 33 where we have a lot of those C sharps. I would say we are in D minor with a splash of F major in the middle. Next, we're going to go on to number 2, which is our key signature. So we do see something completely different here. So if you haven't seen this before, let's just go over how we read key signatures. So the top number is always going to tell us how many beats we have per measure. So we have 3 beats per measure. And then the bottom number tells us what note type that is. So usually we see 2 or 4. In this case, we see 8. So if we divide 4 up into half, and then we'll get the indication for the note type for 8, and that's going to be an 8th note. So that means we have 3 8th notes per measure in this piece. If you are having any difficulties with counting that, just think of it as being in 3, 4. It's exactly the same kind of feeling, but you're just going to read the notes a little bit differently. Alright, so now we're going to go on to number 3, our tempo indication. So we do have allegro moderato here, so it's like a moderately quickly tempo. And we do have the dotted quarter note equals 84, so that's going to be for every beat 1 of each bar is going to be 1 tick from the metronome if you're reading it as a dotted quarter. Next, we're going to be looking at number 4, which is going to be our dynamics. So we have some really interesting dynamics written here. So we start off P, then we read scherzando. Scherzando meaning in a playful manner. So that means we want to have it really nice and light and playful. We start on piano, and we do have a nice crescendo all the way up into that 4th bar there, where we have a mezzo forte, and then we're going to come back down with a decrescendo all the way into bar 9. Then we have piano again, and we're going to essentially do exactly the same thing until bar 23. We, instead of going all the way down, we're actually going to come back up again, and then on bar 24 we're going to play a nice forte, then we're going to come back down to piano, play piano all the way up until that crescendo into bar 30, and then we have that crescendo up to the forte there in bar 32. When we come down to piano again, we have that same pattern as we did in the first line and the 2nd line until we go to the last line there where we do have a sempre crescendo, which means suddenly you're going to crescendo there, and then you're going to end on a nice beautiful forte. Alright, so then we're going to go on to number 5, our articulation. So we do have a really interesting thing going on here. When we have the 16ths with the rests in between, we're going to make sure that we play those nice and detached. So this rhythm may look a little bit tricky, but essentially they are shorter 8th notes. That's all that you're going to be reading here. Make sure that you take note when we do have those breath marks. So the extra accented ha with those notes, that's going to be on bar 4, for example, and also bar number 12. Then we do have a switch with the articulation when it comes to the change of the key signature back into F major. That's going to be on bar 17. So there we're going to have a really nice, beautiful legato with the slurs there. So making sure that you're slurring every 2 bars, so that's every 6 8th notes, until we have a break there at bar 24, where we do again have that same kind of breath accent on the A. And then we have all the way to the end there of that section where we do have at the very end when you have the rallentando, seeing that rall there. I'm looking at bar 30 again, where we do have a breath accent on every one of those notes, making sure that you also get that nice forte there on that A at the end with the fermata, which is that little curve with the dot in the middle. That is just meaning that you're going to hold that for longer than is written as the note. So you at least do half of the amount, which would be at least a dotted quarter note. And then we do have exactly the same thing happening with the repeat of the first section in that third section there. It's exactly the same, just making sure that you are playing staccatos, eighth notes at the very end where the piece just ends off. Finally, we are going to be taking a look at the roadmap. So we don't see any decapos or anything like that. So we are playing just from top to bottom, but it's interesting to note here that we have a new different form. So this is a piece that is an A, B, A form. So it's really cool is that we have our A section, it's really obvious. So we have the dotted 16ths. So all of that is A all the way up to bar 16. And then we actually have our B section, which starts at bar 17. So we have that nice, it's totally different and a totally different key signature. And then we actually go back to the same material that we had at the very beginning at bar 33, and that would be section A again. Or you could also call it A prime because it does change a little bit there at the end, but I would say it's essentially it's A repeated. All right, so now we're going to go into our clap and count. So with this one again, I'm also going to just clap it at the final tempo here. Of course, if you have issues with it, making sure that you go and slow it down, slow the video down to get it to a tempo where you can clap it at a comfortable speed without you making a lot of mistakes. All right, and just a reminder, this is a dotted quarter note equals 84. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Alright, so that one might seem very intimidating, especially if you're watching this video at its full tempo. Don't worry. Again, go ahead and slow that down for a tempo that you feel like you're very comfortable with it, and then start from there. So you can start way slower than that. So you can even start at the dotted quarter note equals 40, for example. Or if you want, you can also have the metronome count out every single beat. So again, why don't we go a little bit faster here, and just so you can get a glimpse of what that would look like. So if we play it at, let's say, 95, so we can pretend that an eighth note equals 95. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But you do whatever feels best for you. Again, using your metronome as your tool to figure out what works best for your current playing and reading level. Alright, so now that we have clapped through it, make sure you notice that it's actually not very different between the A section and the B section. However, it will definitely sound different when we play the correct articulation on the flute. So I'm going to play it again at the final tempo here, so that's going to be the dotted quarter note equals 84. And of course, making sure that you are highlighting the sections here where you feel like you're having any issues. You can always circle them or even use little brackets, working in small sections, so working by note, and then slowly adding them on until you get the full line, and then you can add them slowly onto each other till you can play the full piece. Alright, so let's get into it now. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I really love because it's super dramatic. So you can definitely get that really cool kind of mischievous character when you play it at the beginning. And then I really love when you have that change of character at bars 16 and 17, where you can really have the difference in the articulation to make it really sound very different. And then you have that really nice dramatic moment there at 30, 31, and 32. Really take your time there. If you want to take an even longer rest than I took, feel free. Really make it as dramatic as you can. And otherwise, make sure that you practice this slowly. This one might take you a little bit of time. Again, the jump is a lot from our last video to this one. So really take your time. If it takes over a week, it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that's totally okay. Making sure that you're working slowly so you're listening to yourself. Also using your phone to record or anything that you have to record to listen back to yourself and give yourself feedback as if you're listening to one of your friends play. Alright, that's going to be it for today's video. As always, thank you so much for joining me here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. And if you have any issues when it comes to practicing, check out my free practice guide, also located in the description down below. Thank you so much for joining me here. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, happy fluting!